The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 17 star systems, enslaved countless species, and ruled the Andromeda sector for 3 millennia. Emperor Vexthal commanded fleets that could glass entire worlds, armies that moved like living darkness across the galaxy, and a royal bloodline so pure that his 12 heirs were considered divine beings by their subjects. So when the human cargo ship Determination was captured during a routine raid, nobody expected much from its lone survivor. Dr. Sarah Chen was a xenolinguist, a soft, unremarkable creature by Zephyrian standards, with no claws, no natural armor, and reflexes that seemed laughably slow. The Imperial guards had found her cowering in the ship's medical bay, clutching a tablet filled with research notes about dead languages. She was brought before the Emperor as a curiosity, nothing more. "What use could this frail thing possibly serve?" Emperor Vexthal rumbled, his 6 arms gesturing dismissively. His voice carried the authority of ages, each word precisely articulated in High Zephyrian, a language so complex that even most of his own subjects could barely comprehend it. Sarah looked up at the towering figure on the crystal throne, her heart hammering against her ribs. The Emperor stood 12 feet tall, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming like polished obsidian, compound eyes reflecting the throne room's ethereal light. Around him the court whispered in dozens of dialects, Zephyrian, Kethmori, Veltani, and languages she didn't recognize. "Your Imperial Magnificence," she began in broken High Zephyrian, her accent making several courtiers snicker. "I am a student of languages. Perhaps I could serve by teaching your heirs about human communication." The Emperor's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. His 12 children, ranging from young adults to mere hatchlings, sat in positions of honor around the throne. Each was a perfect specimen of Zephyrian nobility, bred for conquest and command. Amusing, Vexthal decided. Yes, let this creature teach my offspring about the pathetic mewlings of her species. It will broaden their understanding of inferior minds. And so Sarah found herself in the strangest classroom of her career. The Imperial heirs treated her lessons as a game initially. Prince Kethvar, the eldest and most arrogant, would deliberately mangle English pronunciations to make his siblings laugh. Princess Ythara would ask questions designed to humiliate Sarah about humanity's military defeats. The youngest, barely more than a child named Zektoth, seemed genuinely curious but was often bullied into silence by the others. But Sarah had spent her life studying how language shaped thought, and she understood something the Zephyrians didn't. Every language carries the soul of its speakers. She began with simple words. Hope, kindness, resilience. Each lesson built upon the last, weaving human concepts into Zephyrian minds. She told them stories, not grand tales of conquest, but quiet stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. A teacher who stayed behind during an evacuation to save one more child. Scientists who worked for decades to cure diseases they'd never see eliminated. Farmers who shared their last harvest with hungry neighbors. The heirs initially mocked these tales as examples of human weakness. But something strange began happening. Princess Ythara started asking about the concept of sacrifice, a word that existed in Zephyrian but carried different connotations. Prince Kethvar found himself fascinated by empathy, spending hours trying to understand how humans could feel another's pain as their own. Little Zektoth peppered Sarah with questions about forgiveness and why humans would help those who had wronged them. Months passed. Sarah's lessons evolved from basic vocabulary to complex philosophical discussions. She taught them human poetry, music, and art. She explained democracy, showing them how humans chose leaders through consent rather than conquest. She described scientific collaboration, where researchers from different nations shared knowledge freely for the betterment of all. The transformation was gradual but undeniable. The heirs began speaking more English than High Zephyrian among themselves. They started questioning imperial doctrine, asking why strength had to mean domination, why victory required the suffering of others. Emperor Vexthal noticed when Prince Kethvar publicly refused to participate in the ritual execution of captured rebels, declaring in perfect English that mercy is not weakness, but the highest form of strength. He grew concerned when Princess Euthara announced her intention to study xenobiology so she could understand and heal other species rather than conquer them. He became alarmed when his youngest, Zektoth, was found secretly teaching human concepts to the palace servants, spreading ideas about equality and basic dignity. But the final straw came during the Imperial War Council, when all 12 heirs stood together and spoke in unison, not in the commanding tones of High Zephyrian, but in the gentle, determined cadences of English. "Father," they said, "we cannot continue this war. We have learned there is another way." Emperor Vexthal's rage shook the palace. He ordered Sarah brought before him immediately, intending to execute her for corrupting his bloodline. But when the guards arrived at her chambers, they found something unprecedented. The 12 heirs formed a protective circle around the small human woman, speaking rapidly in English, their words flowing with concepts that had no Zephyrian equivalent. "We will not let you harm our teacher," they declared. "She has shown us that true strength comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down." For the first time in his 3,000-year reign, Emperor Vexthal faced a rebellion he couldn't simply crush. These weren't conquered subjects or rival warlords. These were his own children, speaking in a language that had somehow rewired their very souls. Sarah stepped forward, small and fragile before the towering emperor. But her voice carried the weight of every story she'd shared, every lesson she'd taught. "Your imperial magnificence," she said softly in English, knowing his children would translate. "You wanted them to understand inferior minds, but perhaps they've learned that no mind is truly inferior, only different, only unexplored." The emperor stared at his heirs, seeing them as if for the first time. In their compound eyes, he saw something that had never existed in Zephyrian royalty before: compassion, doubt, the radical notion that power existed to serve rather than to dominate. The revolution that followed was unlike any in galactic history. It was quiet, spreading through whispered English words that carried impossible ideas. Within a generation, the Zephyrian Empire had transformed from a conquering force into a coalition of equals, with former enemies becoming partners in exploration and discovery. And in the palace archives, carefully preserved in both English and High Zephyrian, scholars would find Sarah's greatest lesson. The most powerful weapon humanity possesses is not our technology or our weapons. It's our ability to see the universe through someone else's eyes, and in doing so, help them see it through ours. The language of conquest had become the language of hope, and the galaxy would never be the same.